Wait, why is Dad holding the tray? I froze in place. Champagne glasses trembling in my hands. Laughter echoed, not warm laughter mocking. Sharp, guttural. I turned slowly. Every eye in the room was on me. My son's voice cut through the noise. Son? Dad? The caterer's late. Just help out a little. It's not a big deal. Not a big deal? I stared at the white gloves they'd given me. Watched a drop of sweat crawl down my temple. His wife, my daughter-in-law, snapped her fingers from across the pool. Daughter-in-law. Over here. The photographer needs glasses in the shot. Be quick, please. Be quick? My fingers clenched around the silver tray. This was their anniversary party. Their mansion. Their rules. But I had built the foundation they stood on. And now I was nothing more than a walking prop. A servant. A ghost in pressed slacks. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. My name is Walter. I'm 61 years old, and this is what really happened. It didn't start that night. No, this began months ago, quietly, like rot under a fresh coat of paint. I'd spent my life in construction, literal and metaphorical. Foundations, structures, legacy. Raised my son Jeremy on blueprints and dust. He knew the smell of freshly cut wood before he knew cologne. His mother passed when he was 15. Cancer. Quick and brutal. I was all he had left. I didn't spoil him, but I made sure he never felt the cold bite of scarcity. He wore clean clothes, never missed a meal, and graduated debt-free with a business degree I funded. When he married Madison, I thought finally, a partner, a good woman to balance him. But Madison saw me differently. From the start, she once called me quaint, smiled like it was a compliment, told Jeremy at their rehearsal dinner that she'd modernized the whole legacy thing. I remember standing at that table, listening, one hand on my cane, the other in my pocket, wishing my late wife could see this. But grief makes you soft, and love makes you blind. So when Jeremy asked if I could transfer the company's main assets into his name for efficiency, I did, without hesitation. He'd been managing the operations for 2 years. I'd stepped back, trusted him. Madison drafted the papers with her firm, said it was cleaner that way. Fewer taxes, legal protection. I signed them with the same hand that built the first house I ever sold. 2 months later, I was out. Literally. Jeremy called me into the office on a Tuesday morning. Same office I'd furnished with reclaimed mahogany from a church in Vermont. He offered me a coffee and a termination letter. He didn't look me in the eyes. Said, "We're pivoting, Dad. Modernization. It's time." I opened my mouth. Closed it. He pushed a check across the table. Modest. Polite. Madison leaned in from the side. Lips curled into that smile, sterile and venomous. She said, "This gives you more time to enjoy things. Travel. Paint. Retire with dignity." I didn't take the check. I walked out. And for a while I said nothing. Because silence isn't surrender. It's staging. Jeremy and Madison moved into the house. I had custom built for their wedding gift. Through events. Gave interviews in business magazines about disrupting legacy mindsets. And every time I read one, I circled the lies in red pen. Just for myself. Then came the party invite. A white envelope with embossed calligraphy. Madison's note, "Dress nice. Help out where you can. It's important that the family presents well." That sentence rotted in my head like spoiled meat. Help out where I can. Present well. I showed up in a crisp tuxedo. Polished shoes. Clean shave. And they handed me a tray. I played the part. For 1 hour. 2. Photographers clicked. Guest whispered. One man from the city council whispered to his wife, "Wasn't that the founder? What's he doing serving?" Jeremy saw me watching. He gave a small shrug, as if to say, "You had your time." So I poured champagne, cleared plates, nodded when Madison barked. And then, just before the toast, I walked behind the stage past the balloons and floral arches, into the private room where all their gifts were stacked. Laptops, envelopes of cash, gift cards, luxury watches. But I wasn't there for presents. I knelt beside the locked drawer I'd had installed during the original construction back when I still owned the house. Popped it open with a single key I'd never returned. Pulled out the original deed. The real one. With clauses Jeremy never noticed. I stared at it. Ran my fingers over the paper. Then, I tucked it under my jacket. Walked back to the crowd. And just before Jeremy lifted his glass for the final toast, I tapped the mic beside him. Cleared my throat. Sorry to interrupt, but I'd like to make an announcement. Jeremy's eyes widened. Madison whispered. What are you doing? I smiled. She a real smile. And said, just reclaiming what's mine. The air changed when I spoke those words. Perfume. Wine. Chlorine from the pool. All of it suddenly thick, sour like decay beneath the gloss. People stopped mid-sip. Forks hovered halfway to mouths. Jeremy stepped forward fast, whispering between clenched teeth. Jeremy. What are you doing? This isn't the time. I didn't lower the mic. That's where you're wrong, son. This is the perfect time. I took the document from inside my jacket, unfolded it slowly, deliberately. The kind of silence that followed wasn't quiet. It buzzed, like static in your teeth. Jeremy tried to grab the paper. I held it just out of reach. Yes, deed isn't symbolic. It's binding. Legal. And it states quite clearly that this property, this house, the land, the title, reverts back to the original grantor if misappropriated through fraud, coercion, or financial manipulation. Madison's face drained of color. She took a step forward, voice brittle. Madison. That's not possible. We had that paperwork redrafted. I signed your version, but you didn't read mine. The one that came before. The room didn't gasp. It contracted, like it was holding breath. Jeremy scoffed. Jeremy, you can't just show up with some dusty paper and claim. I already did. Checked with the county clerk 2 days ago. It's not a recorded. As of 9:42 a.m. yesterday. This house is mine again. His voice cracked as he said, No, that's not how this works. I folded the deed, tucked it back into my coat. Funny. That's exactly what I thought when you served me that termination letter. Behind us, the projector screen still looped their slideshow, baby photos, vacations, champagne on beaches. But no one was watching it anymore. Not after what I said next. I'm giving you 48 hours. Pack up. Leave. If you're still here after that, you'll be removed. Madison lunged toward me. Jeremy grabbed her arm, holding her back. She hissed. He's bluffing. This is insane. He can't. Call your lawyer. I encourage it. I walked away. Didn't look back. The next morning, Jeremy showed up at my apartment. Yes, apartment. Because I had stepped away from the business, moved into a smaller place by the lake, a simple life. Quiet, clean. He knocked once. Hard. I opened the door with a coffee in hand. Jeremy, we need to talk. I'm listening. He didn't ask to come in. I didn't offer. Jeremy, you embarrassed us. No, son. You embarrassed yourself. I just held up a mirror. He tried to play calm. The kind of calm people rehearse in parking lots before an apology. Jeremy, you can't really want this. You raised me there. Mom. I cut him off. Don't you dare bring your mother into this. His shoulders slumped. He tried again. Jeremy. Okay. Look. Maybe we went too far. Madison pushed for a lot of it. But we were just trying to modernize. You stripped my name off the company. Called me outdated. Used my trust against me. That's not modernization. That's betrayal. He didn't argue. Because it was true. Then came the word I expected but didn't think I'd actually hear. Jeremy. Please. Soft. Strangled. A son I barely recognized. Jeremy, please don't evict us. Madison's parents are in town. The press watches us. If we're seen packing up, it'll ruin us. You should have thought of that before handing me a tray in front of your investors. He blinked. It landed now. The full weight. Because this wasn't just about a party. It was about erasure. And I wasn't going quietly. Still, I offered him one choice. I'll give you the weekend. But if you're still in the house by Monday, the sheriff will come, and next time bring your wife. She owes me her voice, not just her poison. He left without another word, and I stood by the window, coffee warm in my palm, watching him drive away. My reflection in the glass didn't look angry, just finished. But my revenge, it wasn't done. Because the house was only one piece. I had a plan, and it started with the name Madison tried so hard to erase mine. The next morning I met with an old contact, Sheila Dempsey, sharp as ever, owned a string of real estate offices, and owed me a favor. I slid a folder across her desk. I want it in the papers. Front page if you can swing it. Not revenge, just truth. She flipped through the documents, Property records, original contracts, emails Madison thought she'd deleted but hadn't. Sheila, you sure about this? Nia. I want the world to know how they got where they are. She smiled, sad and proud. Sheila, hell of a thing, Walter. Most men your age just buy a boat. I shook my head. Me. I built a legacy. They tried to torch it. I'm just putting out the fire. 2 days later, the article ran. The founder returns. A quiet titan reclaims what was stolen. A full-page spread. My name. My photo. Jeremy called me again. I didn't answer. But Madison did something unexpected. She showed up. At my door. No makeup. No entourage, just her. She stood silently for a moment, then handed me a handwritten note. I opened it while she waited. The first sentence. I didn't understand what you were until I tried to erase you. The chandeliers flickered as Madison entered the courtroom. Not broken, just weak. Like the voltage couldn't keep up with the moment. She wore black, understated, almost respectful, but I could see the defiance in the tightness of her mouth. The practiced posture, a woman who still thought this was a negotiation. I sat 2 rows back. Not at the front, not beside lawyers or cameras. Just a man in a gray suit, hands folded over his cane, watching it all unfold. 3 weeks had passed since the party. Since I reclaimed the house. Since I dropped that article like a match on dry kindling. And now we were here. Because I wasn't done. Not with them. Not with the company. Madison's note had sat on my desk untouched for a full week before I opened it again. I didn't reply. Because some apologies need to be lived, not read. But I did one thing. I went back to the company's downtown office. It had changed. The lobby no longer smelled like sawdust and ambition. It reeked of citrus cleaner and artificial charm. Framed awards lined the walls, none of which had my name. Even the mission statement had been rewritten. Bold builds, brighter futures. Disrupt legacy. I walked through the revolving doors, nodding at the receptionist. She stared like I was a ghost. Receptionist, do you have an appointment? Me. No, I have ownership. Her confusion deepened as I slid a manila envelope across the counter. Inside, a court order. Filed that morning. It challenged the asset transfer from 2 years ago. Based on newly surfaced evidence of coercion, negligence and conflict of interest, specifically involving Madison's firm. The receptionist blinked. Me? Give this to Jeremy. Tell him Walter says hello. That's when it started. The unraveling. Quiet at first. Internal audits. Discreet HR meetings. But nothing stays quiet in a company that large. By week 2, employees whispered in elevators. By week 3, the board called an emergency meeting. And by week 4, we were in court. Jeremy's lawyers tried to paint it as generational misunderstanding. Said I was confused, bitter, clinging to a bygone era. But I had dates. Emails. A voice memo Madison accidentally left running during a strategy call. Her voice, clear as crystal. Madison. He'll sign anything. He still thinks we care. Once the papers are in, we cut him out. Fast and clean. The courtroom didn't gasp, but the silence curled. Jeremy sank in his chair. Madison didn't flinch. I stared at her across the room. She looked at me like someone inspecting a painting that suddenly moved. Then the judge spoke. Judge, we'll need to examine these claims thoroughly. Until then, a temporary freeze on all executive privileges granted under the contested transfer. Jeremy's lawyer stood up, furious. Jeremy's lawyer. You can't just stop the operations. That's our livelihood. The judge looked at me. Then, back at them. Judge, that's what he said 2 years ago. I didn't smile. But inside? Inside I felt the floor tilt ever so slightly back in my favor. That night, I drove home. To my home. The one they'd paraded through for press shoots and influencer collaborations. Now, quiet. Still. Mine. I walked the halls slowly, fingertips grazing the walls I'd laid brick by brick. And then I noticed something new. A small envelope on the kitchen counter. Handwritten. No stamp. Inside. A key. No note. Just the key. I stared at it for a long time, then called an old friend, Doug, the original security contractor. They still have access to the old codes? Doug, you finally making good on that backup system I told you about? Yep, activate it. Doug, tonight? Me. Tonight? 3 hours later, a second security system booted to life. One they didn't know existed. Installed before Madison moved in. Silent. Off-grid. The cameras captured everything. The movers arriving the next morning. Jeremy barking orders. Madison sitting on the porch smoking a cigarette she never admitted to. Boxes marked private, loaded into the back of a black SUV. But they missed one. A small lockbox Madison hid in the crawl space under the guest room. Doug's team found it within 15 minutes. Inside, hard drives, contracts, financial statements that shouldn't have been printed. Especially not ones with falsified timestamps and ghost signatures. Mine. I flipped through them slowly. Each page a nail in their coffin. And then, the twist. A document titled Projected Severance Strategy, Phase 2. Phase 2. It was dated 2 weeks before they terminated me. Jeremy's handwriting. Madison's annotations. It wasn't a pivot. It was a coup. They'd planned it. Scripted my exit. The party was just the performance. I stared at the last page. There, in Madison's handwriting. He's a good actor. He'll pretend it's fine until it's not. But by then, we'll be too far ahead. She was right about one thing. I did pretend, but I wasn't pretending anymore. Not after what I did next. The knock came at 6:17 a.m. Not the polite kind. The kind that vibrates through the wood. Demands to be heard. 3 heavy slams. I was already awake, sipping black coffee, classical music humming low from the vintage radio by the window. I didn't flinch. Just set the cup down. Opened the door. Jeremy stood there. Shirt untucked, tie hanging like a noose. He hadn't committed to tightening. His eyes were raw. Red. Not from crying. From not sleeping. Jeremy? We need to talk. Me. Then talk. He stepped inside before I invited him. Looked around the room like it had secrets worth stealing. Jeremy. Madison's gone. I didn't respond. Jeremy took her passport. Took her mother. Took the dog. Left me with a lawyer's number and half a closet. Still I said nothing. Because I wasn't surprised. Not anymore. Jeremy ran his hand through his hair. Pacing now. Jeremy. She said it was my idea. That I manipulated her. Can you believe that? Me, yes. That stopped him. Dead in his tracks. Jeremy. You think I'm the villain? I stood, slowly. Looked him straight in the face. Me, son. You're not the villain. You're the fool who helped her write the playbook and thought she wouldn't turn the last page on you. He sat down hard on the couch. Stared at the floor. Jeremy. I didn't know she filed a second mortgage against the company properties. I didn't know she had an offshore account. I raised an eyebrow. Me. That your name's attached to. His head snapped up. Me. Found it last night. Under J&W Ventures. Cayman-based. Traced back to her email. But your signature's on every wire. Jeremy. You think she set me up? Me? I don't think anything. I know what's documented. He slumped. And then whispered, I'm going to jail, aren't I? I poured another cup of coffee. Set it down in front of him. Me, not if you follow my lead. Exactly. No improvising. Jeremy. Why would you help me? Me, because you're still my son. He looked up, desperate, grateful. Me. And because I'm not done yet. Jeremy blinked. Jeremy. What does that mean? Mean we're going to give her exactly what she wants. He frowned. Me. Freedom. The illusion of winning. But on our terms. The plan was simple. Legally complex, but simple in its bones. I met with Sheila again, my real estate ally, and 2 corporate attorneys I trusted more than my own reflection. We redrafted company control terms, shifted liability exposure, filed suit against J&W Ventures, but not as me. As Jeremy. He filed a motion to freeze all joint assets on the grounds of financial misrepresentation by a business partner. Because that's all Madison ever was. On paper. A partner. Not a spouse. Not a founder. Just a woman who knew how to climb and when to let go. 3 days later she was served at an airport in Zurich. The photos made it to press before her plane even landed. Disgraced power couple implodes, asset war goes international. Jeremy didn't leave the house for days. I didn't pressure him. But I did hand him a script. Word for word. Every sentence curated for the press conference we'd scheduled together. Jeremy, I can't say this. Me. Yes, you can, because every lie you ever told me started with something you swore you couldn't say. He read it. Line by line. Jeremy, my name is Jeremy Ford. And I stand here not as a CEO, not as a son, but as a man who finally understands the weight of legacy. I betrayed it. And I paid the price. I made him practice until his voice didn't shake. Until the tears he squeezed out didn't feel like props. Until he believed every word. The press showed up in droves. Cameras. Flashbulbs. Boom mics floating like vultures. We stood side by side. Two men in matching suits. Different generations. Same scars. Jeremy read every word. Owned. Every failure. And when he stepped aside, I took the mic. Just one sentence. Me. Sometimes the greatest act of forgiveness is letting them watch you rebuild what they tried to bury. That line made the evening news. Madison issued a statement from abroad. Flat defensive, claimed victimhood. But the tide had turned. The public didn't buy it. Not anymore. 3 weeks later, Jeremy stepped down officially, signed the papers, returned full control to me. No fight. No ceremony. Just a shaky hand and a tired nod. Jeremy, it's all yours. Me no, son. It's ours. If you're ready to earn it. He blinked. Jeremy, you'd let me come back? Me. Under one condition. He waited. Me? You start at the bottom. No corner office. No title. Jeremy, what do I get? Me. A second chance. He nodded. Jeremy. Okay. We shook hands. No hug. Not yet, but maybe someday. That night I stood on the same balcony Madison once posed for Instagram photos on, wind brushing against my face like old regrets. I looked down at the garden, cleaned, trimmed, quiet, and whispered to the dark. Legacy doesn't need applause, just roots. Then I turned and saw a silhouette by the door. Jeremy, holding a hammer. Jeremy, you said I'm starting from the bottom. Figured I'd help fix the shed roof. I smiled, maybe for the first time in years. I found it in the back of the drawer. A Polaroid photo faded at the edges, torn at the corner. Jeremy was 5, sitting on my shoulders, grinning, ice cream smeared on his chin. His mother had written on the back in her neat, looping script, "Teach him to build, not just buildings, a life." I ran my thumb over the ink. It had smudged over time, but the weight of those words hadn't faded. It had only grown heavier. That morning Jeremy was already on the site before I arrived. Not overseeing, not directing, working, boots covered in dust, hammer swinging on rhythm. He was quiet, focused. The crew glanced at me for approval. I gave them a nod. No shortcuts, no special treatment. He was just another man rebuilding what he'd once helped destroy. And I was watching, not with suspicion, but with caution. Because forgiveness isn't a light switch. It's a process. Back in the office I finalized the acquisition paperwork. We'd just bought back the last of the assets Madison had siphoned off. 3 shell companies. 2 dummy accounts. All of it now back under one name. My name. The receptionist knocked. Receptionist. There's someone here to see you. I looked up. She stepped in. Madison. Dressed in navy. No heels. No makeup. Just sharp eyes and a manila folder in hand. I didn't ask her to sit. She did anyway. Madison. You win. Me. This wasn't a game. She smirked. But it didn't hold. Madison. You humiliated us. Me. No. You humiliated yourselves. I just refused to disappear. She slid the folder toward me. Madison, these are the last of the documents. Accounts, properties, things I didn't report. They're yours. I didn't touch it. Me. Why now? Madison. Because there's nothing left to save, and I'd rather walk away than be dragged. Me. You already were. Her jaw twitched. Then quietly. Madison. He still believes you love him. Me. He's not wrong. Madison. Even after everything. Me. Especially after everything. She stood. Madison, you're a strange man, Walter. I finally looked her in the eye. Me no. I'm just a man who doesn't quit on what he builds. She left without another word. That folder? I opened it 2 hours later. Buried inside was a final surprise. An unsigned affidavit. Typed. Dated. A confession. Detailing how Jeremy had wanted to back out of the plan. How Madison pushed harder. How she'd used emotional blackmail. Even threatened to fake a miscarriage during the negotiations to gain sympathy leverage with the board. It was cruel. Vile. But I didn't show it to Jeremy. Not because he didn't deserve the truth, but because he already knew it. And now he was doing the work. We rebuilt the company from the inside out. New mission, new ethics oversight, new partnerships with local trade schools, real community reinvestment, and I made one final move. I rewrote the succession plan, locked it in with legal oversight this time. No loopholes, no backroom dealings. When I eventually step down on my terms, it will pass to someone who's earned it. Maybe Jeremy, maybe not, but someone who understands what it means to build, not just profit. 3 months later, we held a company anniversary banquet. Same garden, same lights, different tone. Jeremy stood beside me as I gave the closing speech. I kept it short. Legacy isn't what you leave behind, it's what you teach people to carry forward. The room applauded. He looked at me, eyes shining. Jeremy, did I do enough? You're doing enough. He nodded. And for the first time I believed it. Back at the house, as guests filtered out, Jeremy pulled out his phone. Showed me a photo. The old Polaroid. Digitized. Cleaned up. Jeremy. Found it in Mom's old sewing box. Figured you'd want a copy. I smiled. Took the phone. Set it down. I already have the real one. Jeremy. Yeah, but I want it framed, in the new office. I paused. You're not getting a corner office yet. He grinned. Jeremy. I'll earn it. I watched him disappear into the hallway. And for the first time in years, I felt peace. Not the kind that's given. The kind you wrestle back. And make yours again. If this story struck a chord, hit like, subscribe, and tell me what you think in the comments.